Imagine being arrested and thrown in jail without a trial, by orders of the president no less. This is exactly what happened when Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus back in the American Civil War. So let's talk about why he did it and some of the consequences of it. So when the Civil War started in 1861, Lincoln was faced with a really big task of trying to keep the Union intact. And one of the signs that this was going to be very, very difficult was that shortly after the Civil War, riots broke out in Maryland. Pro-Confederate mobs were attacking Union troops in the street, and they were cutting rail lines to Washington, D.C. Lincoln was desperate to keep Maryland from joining the Confederacy. So his argument was that in order to maintain order and protect the capital, he had to suspend habeas corpus. And what this meant was they allowed the military to arrest and detain suspected rebels without a trial. Lincoln argued that preserving the Union justified these extraordinary measures, and that it was wartime and a time of crisis, so he said that this was a justified action even if it meant bypassing constitutional rights. The Chief Justice even came forward and said that Lincoln's actions were unconstitutional and tried to rule that this wasn't allowed, but Lincoln ignored the ruling and ploughed on forward with his way of doing things. And many, many people saw what Lincoln did as an abuse of presidential power. So they saw it just as a power grab, and he was using the war as an excuse, and they accused him of being a dictator and violating their fundamental rights. And so this suspension lasted throughout the war up until 1865. In that time, thousands of people were imprisoned without a trial, including journalists, politicians, and suspected rebels. And so after this, the courts determined that only Congress would have the power to suspend habeas corpus. Since Lincoln's time, no US president has unilaterally suspended habeas corpus. But this decision by Lincoln did set the precedent for future presidents to be able to use emergency powers during World War II and the War on Terror to suspend these rights. And look, historians still debate to this day whether or not Lincoln's actions were justified. And this suspension remains one of the most controversial acts throughout Lincoln's entire presidency. And look, as a big left-winger, I know my opinions, but it's still up for debate. Was Lincoln being a bit of a tyrant and overstepping his powers? Or was it justified to try and save the Union? Let me know what you think, and give me a follow for any more quick history deep dives or intriguing stories from the past that may or may not be linked to current events.